Hey, so this is just an update on my New Zealand Court of Appeal cases to stop the industrialized dumping of the world's most lethal torture chemicals into our watersheds right through our bush, torturing our animals to death, and then the degradation products of these poisons flow down into our entire ecosystem, irrigating our food, feeding our livestock, and entering our drinking water supply, our human drinking water supply. So this crime is an absolute tragedy, and you've got Ghana Gobles on News Hub, owned by Oaktree internationally, which is, God knows who the shareholders are. Probably the royals, the Pope, half the moguls of the world like Branson, Bezos, and Gates. Telling you all that your children are safe to eat 3 pellets of the world's most lethal, toxic, deadly reproductive agent, nerve agent, torture poison. And then this morning, yesterday apparently, saying that anti-1080 people are this and that. Well, Ghana Gobles under Article 25E belongs in prison for publicly inciting a genocide under the Rome Statute. And he's certainly on my subordinate list for that. The fact is that this is not about anti-1080 people. When I started this case, there was a lot of harassment from anti-1080 people, and I think a lot of them are actually just paid by the government. But amongst those people, amongst that group, are really genuine people who don't want their food and water poisoned. And I think that's literally like 100% of New Zealand who don't want their food and water poisoned. Maybe bar the 1% who seem to be advocating this crime against all logic and law. So, this is not about a band of anti-1080 renegades. This is about, and I don't like the ban or the anti or any of the negative words. The fact is that 1080 is the world's most lethal poison. It's a super toxin. It's banned by the US. The US is like poison central, and it's still banned by the US. There's no way that this should be dumped in our water. Ardern is writing letters to 8-year-olds saying that this is perfectly safe in the water and it breaks down into harmless products. ERMA, that's the Environmental Protection Agency in New Zealand, their own documents state very clearly that it breaks down into the fluorocitrate molecule, which is one of the world's most deadly killer molecules. It kills your cells. We're in this grip of disgusting propaganda where our media is completely controlled by international interests who are dirty industrialists and this climate change fraud moguls who want this one world government to divest and demoralise this country by poison and new legislation which it leverages. There's articles everywhere at the moment saying, where have the insects all gone? Well, they're being poisoned to death. Industrialized levels of chemicals, enough to kill hundreds of millions of people, are being dumped in our forests. Okay, so I just want to say that the Court of Appeal have accepted my cases on appeal, but they've issued a decision late this week stating that, and I made the hardest fee waiver argument ever argued in New Zealand, I think. But anyway, they've denied my fee waiver. What that means is that, they've all read my argument, which is undeniable, and I've linked it. I'll link it below this video. You can't deny it. There is zero acceptable daily intake of this chemical, according to the World Health Organization. 0. And yet our own Ministry of Health say that we can have parts per million safely in our water, and yet ERMA admit it's a reproductive toxin. It's causing the mass sterility. They admit it's a brain toxin. And here's an example of exactly why the degradation products is bullshit. Excuse my language. The World Health Organization quote a story of a boy who ate 1080 impregnated wheat. Now, if 1080 breaks down into harmless products, then how can 1080 impregnated wheat exist? Because when 1080 would have been metabolized, it would have been metabolized into harmless products, right? No, it broke down into products that caused massive brain retardation in this child. So, lots of parents have got issues with things like autism and Asperger's and that sort of thing. This chemical in the water causes a chemical reaction in the brain. It attacks the brain. It acts like one of the other degradation products that are not even studies is an amino acid that can form into a complex protein. And mad cow disease is a complex protein that attacks the brain like a virus. It's not a virus, but it spreads to basically attack the brain. And trust me, I almost know this feeling because I've just survived about like almost 20 days of poisoning. I had a really severe poisoning case of neurotoxin, which was the most devastating. Like, your mind is there and you can feel your brain literally dying and like having a chemical reaction to almost send you into seizures or crash your system, basically. So, it's very interesting that I'm working on a case to stop mass poisoning and I get seriously poisoned. And it's not the only attack that I'm enduring to do these cases either. So, I think we live in a really dangerous country, actually. But let's get back to these cases. Still going so far. So I need to raise the money to continue these cases by the 20th. I have to pay the court by the 21st. The court have decided that, they literally decided that because I said I couldn't afford to pay the fees personally, and I would be forced to publicly promote the case to raise finance if they didn't grant me the fee waiver. And my argument was a lot more complex, trust me, but they basically directed me to publicly promote the case in order to raise the money. Now, I've done these cases around the world against the government agendas to destroy for 10 years, so I can tell you that raising money on cases that are against the government are almost impossible. People, even when they don't agree with the poisoning, strongly feel that they have families to protect, they have businesses to protect, they have interests to protect. So, really what I'm looking for here right now is someone who's dying next week who wants to leave me an inheritance because, really, realistically, what I understand about this is that there's very few people willing to stand up against this crime. That's why it's occurring. There's a devastating chemical extermination of populations around the world. They're dumping toxic chemical waste in our oceans. They're dumping predecessor, monofluoroacetate and other poisons in our oceans. The amount of cyanide they're putting through our forest, it's like industrialized spreading of cyanide throughout forest. It's absolutely outrageous. It kills everything. These chemicals kill everything and restructure our water to the deadly fluorocitrate molecule that travels whole into our food and water system across everything. And you've got fungus problems with our bees right now. You've got and that's going in our honey. You've got deadly pathogens happening in our potatoes and our kiwi fruit. I mean, it's just terrifying how sickly this country is going to continue to get under Ardern's chemical regime. And so, so I need to raise the money to pay the fees, do the travelling. I'm in Auckland, cases in Wellington, horrendous printing bills because all the reports that need to be printed, etc., etc. So I need a serious donation. So if anyone's lying on their deathbed and would like to leave me that next week, that'd be great. No, I'm obviously kind of half joking on that, but I mean, the point is that I know, and the court knows, it's very unrealistic that I can fundraise to pay the fees within 10 days. I need a miracle. So if you're sitting out there and you're my miracle, I'm very grateful, and I would very much appreciate the financing to continue this case because it's the world's most lethal, deadly crime. And to say that this crime is not a matter of public interest when they're poisoning our water and food system to death. We are, how many people do you know of dying of cancer? How many people are sterile? How many people have reproductive organ cancers, most specifically? It's just an absolute tragedy what is being inflicted here. We are a guinea pig test model country for a massive chemical extermination. I mean, I want to say to the West Coast people, please, trap your rain that you're getting, your outrageous spring weather of massive ice storms and heavy rain. Test your rain, because a lot of these rain or superstorms in America, the water tastes like chlorine, smells like chlorine. It smells chemical. So, it's not like you go out in the rain and open your mouth and would have any chance of working that out unless you go out consciously collecting some of that rain and getting it tested. What chemicals are in that water? Is it naturally occurring? Because the weather technology that exists now to create earthquakes on demand, to create weather storms, so that, especially during spring, there's a real agenda to end agriculture here right now. Read my argument. It certainly begins to unveil it. Now, my 10-page summary is only based on an injunction order request, so it's not the whole argument, so it doesn't really go too heavily into the agriculture side of things, but there's no way you can read it and come away thinking that agriculture is safe with what Ardern is inflicting on this country currently. She's a serial mass-killing, genocidal maniac exterminating the country. That's what it is. That's what I argued to the ICC. That's what I'm arguing to the Court of Appeal, because that's what's happening here. Giant smoke. This is Goebbels' big lie. I mean, I call Ghana Goebbels because, you know, that's obviously, I mean, he just sits on the television and tells massive lies to enable this crime. But, I mean, I think I sent an email out to all the media last week anyway saying, you know, traitors, here's profile of your crime. Because the media here are totally complicit in this crime. It's just disgusting. I mean, I don't know how. It's either massive brain retardation or, you know, pure chemical, criminal intent, or I don't know if they're AI chipped and already just completely programmed to not see that deadly chemicals in the water causes death and disease. I mean, it's just so obvious. It's just unbelievable that mainstream New Zealand have even accepted this happening when their children's lives are at risk, you know. So anyway, that's my situation. The court have required that I turn into a fundraiser after just recovering from massive poisoning, and raise the fees for this case, which, you know, who knows? In my 10 years of experience, that's freaking almost impossible, especially within 10 days. So, dear God, I'm looking for a miracle. If you are willing to risk financing against this deadly government, knowing, I might say, that the consequence is that you are harassed, harangued, you know, divested. You know, my entire family was divested when I first began a massive dairy industry transition for organic, sustainable farming in New Zealand. I raised all the money, I contracted everything, and then we were completely divested by Michael Fay and Michael Stiasny and co. Lost everything, so otherwise I'd be able to finance my case myself. So, you know, and that's like one of my 10 stories of serious, massive harassment and divestment. So, not to put you off financing this or anything, but just know that if you get involved in this, there is risk. The people who are involved in advancing this crime are deadly. They're very criminal, and there is no limit, no boundaries of what they will do. However, this is a war on our life, and the reason why I push my case forward in the New Zealand system, even though I have proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that it is just so diabolically corrupt, it is just beyond human to be this corrupt, I persevere in the New Zealand courts because on the hope that the International Criminal Court, who accepted my case for review on July 23rd, is genuinely separate to the United Nations, who are totally behind driving this crime. They're the front driving this crime through all the governments, to the drones like Ardern, who are mass killing the population by chemicals willingly to create structural reform with a big smile on her face, really happy about it, while, you know, sterilising you. This chemical in your water at parts per trillion is a steriliser, causes baby deformities, so your child gets depressed when she's 13, has a stroke when she's 21, dies of ovarian cancer when she's 24. You know, that's what she's doing to your children right now, willingly. So, oh my God, horrendous. But behind the UN is some of the most well-known mogul faces in the world, royal family right up in there. I asked the Queen's representative directly to stop this crime when I first started this case. They've conversed with me on most of my cases around the world, International Criminal Court cases around the world, and other lobbying for the past, I don't know, 7 years. So, and I was blocked on email. It was my transition to realise, well, if the royal family not only don't stop the crime when they have the reserve powers to stop the crime through the Governor General, and they block me on notice of this kind of a crime, then they're totally categorically proven 100% to be administering the crime. And then when you look at the fact that this poison's been spread here since 1954, it's without a doubt, you know, this is definitely related to Prince Philip's Nazi heritage. He's like the royal of the Nazis, where he thinks the human population is a plague. I genuinely have come to the conclusion that the climate change narrative is just a cover story for depopulation. It's a cover story for the chemical warfare, the weather warfare, and the electromagnetic warfare that is going to be waged on people to mass depopulate by sterilisation, death and disease over the coming 10 years in order to transition to the 2030 United Nations global government. We need to make sure that this doesn't happen. I can only do one step at a time, especially I've suffered massive EMF attacks, and it's my second poisoning this year, and I got poisoned last year, long story. But when I came back to New Zealand, and I've been under heavy surveillance, so, this is I don't exactly know how we win, but we win, because, good prevails over evil, and what they're doing right now is torturing children by deadly poisons. And there's nothing more treacherous. So we need to stop this. My argument getting to the court is really important. So again, if there's anyone out there who's willing to put finance into this, I would greatly appreciate it. I've sort of risked life and limb to get it this far, but within 10 days I need to have the miracle of financing, and if anyone would like to finance me to be safely transferred out of this deadly killer country where I keep getting attacked and my life is at risk, I'd greatly appreciate that too. Okay, cheers.